The gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Estes, to inquire.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for our witnesses for joining us today. You know, Kansans I represent are concerned about the country being on the wrong track. They know that the policy decisions made by the Democrat majority over the last 2 years is going to impact their friends and family as we head into winter. I'm concerned they're right about the impact on a present lifestyle. Over the past couple of years, we've seen unrestrained majority spend an astonishing $3.8 trillion on these tax and spend agenda items. While my colleagues across the aisle are quick to say that this is a good investment, I'm pretty sure most of this is going to provide zero benefit to hardworking Kansans. Spending money is not the same as making a good investment. It's not hard to see how deliberate policy decisions by the majority have created runaway inflation, an army of tax auditors, and an unprecedented energy crisis. Most Kansans I talk to see through the smoke and mirrors. Just like they know that President Biden and the Democrats' radical tax and spend agenda have been responsible for inflation, they know that many different provisions or bills related to the climate often do not improve or even relate to the environment. Instead, they go to pet projects that really support far-left initiatives. For example, the $1.2 trillion Infrastructure Act actually spent more on Green New Deal gimmicks for electric cars than on roads and bridges combined. Likewise, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act was chock full of some of the most wasteful earmarks in American history. In addition to spending, the administration has abused its regulatory power over health care to irresponsibly force the entire healthcare sector towards carbon neutrality. This is another policy choice that leaves Americans worse off, particularly in the current day. We've seen how some of these new Green Deal mandates are working for states like California. Republicans, on the other hand, and me personally as well, have an all-of-the-above energy strategy that we want to prioritize America's energy independence, embrace fossil fuels and renewable energy, and doesn't allow Washington to pick winners and losers through massive subsidies. While visiting a rural hospital in my district recently, the hospital CIO put it simply. CEO put it simply. He said, "We just want an opportunity to take care of people. The bureaucracy and top-down mandates from D.C. get in the way of doctors and nurses taking care of patients." There's certainly a lot of things that can be fixed within the healthcare industry in the United States. Of the numerous healthcare-related problems, many which impact our constituents today, we've not had real hearings on what we need to address. Among the most pressing is a critical workforce shortage, which was made worse with the vaccine mandates implemented by the Biden administration, as well as impending Medicare cuts. So thanks to bad policy decisions in Washington, hospitals and nursing homes are unable to employ enough full-time staff to remain at full capacity and take care of those in need today. I'm sure that we don't want to wait until facilities been closing to have debates that need to be had in this committee. Mr. Powell, we've talked a little bit about the grid. I mean, you've talked some about that. You know, Californians aren't even allowed to charge their electric vehicles. So why has the California power grid had issues keeping up with demand?
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the question, Congressman. California has made a number of decisions to prioritize a very particular set of clean energy technologies over the last couple of cycles. And those decisions have, at times, really challenged the ability of that grid to sustain constant, reliable power, especially through extreme weather events like heat waves and increasingly fires that are facing California, both because of the impacts of climate change and because of poor forest management practices in California. Thankfully, as I mentioned in my testimony, they have taken action to preserve the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant as of a few weeks ago. They've also taken action to build a much larger resiliency reserve and also to focus on ultra-resilient sources of both renewable and clean energy, so things like large-scale geothermal energy and a very large system of long-duration energy storage, so batteries effectively or other storage technologies that would really back up the wind and solar that they've put on the grid. The order in which they've done these things has led to both very high costs in California and, in many instances, poor reliability in that grid. I tend to think that had they done these things in a different order, so started by preserving their existing clean energy generating assets, like both of their major nuclear facilities to begin, and then focusing on a combination, a portfolio of both ultra-resilient clean energy resources, again, like long-duration energy storage and geothermal and hydropower, and also layered on a fair amount of additional intermittent renewables like wind and solar. They could have accomplished the same outcomes, which is to reduce the emissions from their grid, but they could have done it at much lower cost and with much higher reliability. And I would love to see other states and our country as a whole take that kind of action as opposed to doing it the other way around and sort of be forced into these things at the last moment.
Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.